Good afternoon, Mark South HurricaneTrack.com here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Monday, August the 6th, 2012. Figured I would start out looking at sea surface temperature anomalies, those departures from normal across the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. We see a pretty warm Atlantic as compared to normal, a few areas of below normal and a few spots, but nothing widespread. The Eastern Pacific still holding its own sea surface temperature wise, warmer than normal, but we're starting to see a little cold area, colder, more normal, snaking its way through this, attempting to develop El Nino. If we compare it to 2009, things were definitely warmer out here in the Eastern Pacific back in 2009. The Atlantic was much colder than it is now, and that was another El Nino year. And if we compare to right now, there's another obvious difference, and that is the very cold water of the remainder of the Pacific here. We are now in this what's called Pacific Decadal Oscillation, where the Pacific has just generally cooled off overall while the Atlantic stays warmer. Overall, it's all part of a cycle, and it has happened many times before. Again, looking back at 2009, a definite much warmer Pacific than we're seeing now, and that could have implications, at least where we are now in the Atlantic and Pacific, on the rest of the Atlantic hurricane season. The absence of an El Nino, and we can look at that too by looking at the state of the atmosphere. With no El Nino in place, at least not officially, and certainly not a strong one, August and September here could be quite busy in the Atlantic. One of the other index values that we look at is the SOI, the Southern Oscillation Index, and that is the pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin in Australia, way out in the tropical West Pacific. And what I'm looking for is to see if these numbers are substantially negative, especially the 90-day. I'm looking to see if it's at -8 or lower. The Bureau of Meteorology typically associates a -8 or lower 90-day SOI number as being more associated with an El Nino type atmosphere. And right now, the 30-day, the 90-day, and the daily contributor are all not anywhere near that -8. So the atmosphere is not behaving as an El Nino type atmosphere. Alright, so there we have a look at sea surface temperature anomalies and a little bit about El Nino. I'm going to talk about that more on tomorrow's video blog. Moving ahead now to Ernesto. No chance at all now, as far as I can tell, that it'll go up into the Gulf. I guess you never say never, but the global models have done a fantastic job of handling this so far, and they continue to indicate that enough ridging will stay up here to force Ernesto on a path across Central America, namely the Yucatan Peninsula here. Now up on the northeast tip where Cancun and Cozumel lie, no problem there, maybe some tropical storm conditions, but that's just a big maybe. I believe that for the most part the conditions will be worse south of there. Certainly some squally weather and general rainy conditions here by Wednesday. So just take a day to hang out in the hotel or the resort, but don't cancel your plans to Cancun and vicinity. However, if you're going to Belize this week, you might want to wait. Hurricane conditions expected here within the next 3 days or so, and 2 days probably, and then it moves across the Yucatan, bringing flooding rains perhaps to Guatemala, obviously portions of Belize, and the southern Yucatan Peninsula. Looking at a satellite picture of it, definitely more curved in shape. The central dense overcast trying to form there, the core. We'll take a look at the closer shot of it in just a minute. Water vapor shows less dry air. There's still some sitting over Central America, but a much more moisture-rich environment for Ernesto to take advantage of. You also see, very well on the water vapor imagery here, this sort of wispy color or shape or whatever you call it, effect, that's the word I'm looking for, to the clouds, indicating well-established outflow, where the wind comes in at the surface, spirals in counterclockwise, and then gets thrown out at the top in a clockwise fashion. When that is done very efficiently, as we see with Ernesto today, it can strengthen, storms can strengthen. It is also passing over some fairly warm sea surface temperatures. This tracking map comes from our client services site, and this is the forecast track. Not going over the warmest of the heat content area, but still pretty warm through here right up until landfall, and that means it could strengthen until landfall. And it has been our experience that hurricanes that are intensifying when they hit you tend to have more amplified effects. So please keep that in mind. If you're in Belize or have interest down there, let them know that this thing definitely means business. It is not a dried up, weak tropical storm anymore. It is on the increase, moving towards the Belize area. And again, you can see that well-established outflow here. Curved bands of deep convection trying to wrap in to a well-defined center of circulation now that is not sitting out on the edge of the convection like it was over the weekend. Instead, that center tucked right in here, and that means it is on the increase. So please be ready if you're in the hurricane warning area. It should track right on across, get into the southern Bay of Campeche, and then eventually die out here over mainland Mexico. Here's the leftovers of Florence. We'll watch as it tracks off to the west. Maybe it tries to refire here in the southwest Atlantic, but I don't see much indication of that in the global models, so I wouldn't worry too much there. Also tomorrow, we'll take a look at the Madden-Julian oscillation, the MJO pulse looking more favorable as we go on through the rest of the month. And I'll explain why that's important and how to track that, and some of the data that supports a favorable phase, meaning more tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. Otherwise, things are pretty quiet. In the Eastern Pacific, too, even though there's invest area 92E, it's headed west under that strong Eastern Pacific high pressure. There you have it for today, Monday, August the 6th, 2012. Again, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll have another video blog for you tomorrow.